Ladies and gentlemen, it's 7 o'clock. I call this meeting of the General Government and Public Safety Committee to order. If you would rise with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda, we have comments from citizens. Hearing none, I'll close that section. The Centralia Student Agriculture Issues Presentation. I'm guessing that's what you guys are. So go ahead and get started.
Feel free to use my phone if you like.
Yeah, there's a microphone if you.
Would you like us to use?
Yeah, because we're actually recording these,
Oh,
put
yeah.
them on the internet, so we would like to amplify. Thank you, sir.
No, not be on or
That should be on right now.
be on? Wait.
Yeah, sir, do us all a favor and introduce the folks in your party.
Okay. I'm Bryce Logston. This is Samantha Nichols, Emily Angel, Chase Harper,
Okay.
Braden Specker, and Nick Miller.
And who's that young lady over there?
That's Celestia Angel. She's taking pictures for
Okay
us.
then.
You by chance have a cell phone
Huh?
on you? Do a cell phone?
Yeah, you know.
That's probably interference with the cell phone. Thank you, sir.
Just gonna come back and get an action photo as well you can, James.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bryce Logston, and I am representing the Centralia FFA chapter. And this evening, we're holding an informative meeting to help the Missouri Public Utilities Commission make a more informed decision on whether or not to allow Greenbelt Express have access to Missouri land. Those of you with us tonight will be affected by Greenbelt Express in one manner or another. For some of you, it will cross your property, leading you to have great concern. For others, it will offer a cleaner environment and a more reliable energy grid. Regardless of which side you're on, we must collectively decide, is Greenbelt Express our
golden energy opportunity.
Or just another gilded gimmick.
With me this evening, speaking on behalf of the pros, I have Chase Harper, a project manager for Greenbelt Express, and Braden Specker, a Kansas farmer with windmills on his property. And speaking on behalf of the cons, I have Emily Angel, a Central Missouri real estate agent, and Samantha Nichols, a Central Missouri farmer whose land will be affected by the transmission lines. And our final guest is Nick Miller, a member of the Missouri Public Utilities Commission. For a little background knowledge on Greenbelt Express, it is a direct current transmission line that will run 750 miles overhead from Kansas through Missouri and Illinois to Indiana and the states further east. Similar to the trains that carry the grain to the Midwest market, Greenbelt Express will transport the clean energy from Kansas to the states in need of more energy. With this, it will cost approximately $2 billion to build, but will open up for an approximate profit of $7 billion. Mr. Miller, will you please explain the role of the Missouri Public Utilities Commission?
The job of the Missouri Public Utilities Commission is to regulate investor-owned electric, natural gas, steam, water, and sewer utilities in Missouri. My goal today is to gain information and discuss the issues over the line and make a fair decision when it comes to the Greenbelt Express project.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I would now like to call upon Mr. Harper to discuss the positive impacts of this project.
The Greenbelt Express clean line will grant an estimated 5,000 temporary jobs, which consist of construction of the line itself and more wind farms in Kansas. The Greenbelt Express clean line will deliver 3 Hoover Dams worth of energy per year, enough power to power more than 1.4 million homes. Electricity prices will also likely decrease due to fierce competition between other electric companies. This project is expected to reduce carbon emissions by 10,000 tons per year. 10 million tons per year. Nitrogen oxide, a contributor to smog, by 10,000 tons per year. And sulfur dioxide, a precursor to acid rain, by 14,000 tons per year. High voltage direct current, or HVDC lines, use narrower easements, which means less land when going through people's properties. Thank
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Ms. Angel, will you please discuss the negative impacts in the real estate sector?
The Kansas Corporation Commission has granted Grain Belt Express eminent domain authority. This means that once this line has been approved, Grain Belt Express has the right to take private property with the help of the government. Once this line is approved, it will be considered a national interest electric transmission corridor. This means that multiple transmission lines can run along in the same area. These existing corridors take anywhere between 3/4 and a 5-mile wide swath out of the landowner's property.
Thank you, Ms. Angel. Mr. Specker, will you offer some insight to this subject?
Grain Belt Express project will grant me $4,000 to $8,000 per wind turbine put on my property, $3,000 to $4,000 per megawatt of energy produced, or even 3 to 4% of the company's revenue. This project will provide cheaper energy. It will help to build a more reliable electric grid and also help in rural economic development.
Thank you, Mr. Specker. Ms. Nichols, your opinion, please.
The Grain Belt Express will run across my property, taking a portion of my hard-earned land. As a concerned mother, I worry about the electromagnet and high voltage linked to long-term diseases and illnesses, such as brain tumors, leukemia, birth defects, and lymphoma, as well as the short-term effects of headaches, fatigue, anxiety, insomnia, prickling and burning of the skin, and rashes and muscle pain.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. I will now turn it over to Mr. Miller to ask questions submitted by the audience.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Mr. Harper, how will this Grain Belt Express project benefit Missouri?
The Grain Belt Express project will deliver up to 500 megawatts of low-cost, clean power to consumers and businesses in Missouri, enough energy to power more than 1.4 million homes in the surrounding regions. Grain Belt estimates that property taxes on the transmission lines will generate millions of dollars for Missouri annually and be distributed to counties where the converter stations and lines are located, most likely Audrain County. Cleanline is committed to compensating landowners fairly and expects to pay 100% or more of fair market value for the easement areas. Along with this, we look for local manufacturers that can help build the components we look to build in Missouri.
Will the Grain Belt Express help the local economy by providing local jobs to the people?
Missouri Department of Economic Development Director Mike Downing announced agreements between Grain Belt Express and local manufacturers, and Missouri manufacturers, ABB Incorporated, General Cable, and Hubble Power Systems. Top executives from ABB, General Cable, and Hubble Power Systems joined Cleanline and Mike Downing in a morning news conference in Jefferson City. These three businesses employ nearly 1,000 Missourians in St. Louis, Centralia, and Centralia, respectively.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Mrs. Angel, you were concerned about the property values. How will this transmission line affect these values?
From a real estate perspective, this clean line project is not a good idea. As of right now, an acre of good row crop land with 90% tillage costs around $6,000. If these transmission lines come through, the price of the property will decrease, causing the investor to lose part of his or her investment. Not only will the land with the transmission lines be affected, but any houses within the site of the line will decrease in value. Most property value impact studies use market response to determine impact. From a market response perspective, transmission lines affect property values adversely when they sell at lower prices or more slowly than comparable properties without transmission lines. This approach tends to find less negative evidence than what might be expected based on surveys and interviews that ask about people's feelings about transmission lines. Although the majority of such queries reveal negative associations with transmission lines, although not without some variation and exceptions.
Thank you, Ms. Angel. Mr. Specker, how does the renewable energy from your wind turbines go to affect the use of non-renewable energy?
Harnessing power from the wind is one of the cleanest and most sustainable ways to generate electricity because it does not produce any air toxins or global warming emissions. Wind is also abundant and exhaustible and makes a viable large-scale alternative to fossil fuels.
Thank you, Mr. Specker. Now, Ms. Nichols, how does this affect the productivity of your farm and livestock?
Recent research has shown that livestock being too close to the power line can disrupt day-to-day living habits, such as stunt growth, which would decrease the value of my livestock. The power line can also affect my crops by causing them not to grow to their full potential, decreasing my harvest. Though the severity of the effects depends on the power that is being transmitted across the line.
As I prepare to make my decision, I would like to summarize what we have heard as the pros and the cons of the way the facts. The line will increase power, the use of renewable power, and increase of jobs and the payment to landowners are the benefits of this line. The decreased land prices, health risk, and forced takeover of land and assets are the downfalls. These topics will be taken into consideration while we make our final judgments. I would like to thank Mrs. Angel and Mrs. Nichols, as well as Mr. Specker and Mr. Harper for the local insight over the issue, as well as Mr. Logston for running this meeting. Finally, seeing as the facts have been presented, it is up to you as the commission members, as well as myself, to responsibly decide.
Is Grainbelt Express our golden energy opportunity?
Or just another gilded gimmick.
Thank you for your participation. Are there any questions?
I was at the municipal league conference, 6 or 8 months ago, and talked to some of the players in this endeavor. So I got a lot more information on it tonight. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I have a question. I understand how it affects property values because I see that. However, I would ask the question of how do you anticipate we get power to the people that need it, considering that our power consumption is going up and we're going to have to give power to people if we don't run these lines.
That's your second. That's your area. Tease.
Well, there are many things you can do. This one is one of the cleanest ones you can do because all the other ones, or most of the other ones, create many emissions. And like I said, with the coal and the carbon, and I'm not sure what else they would do if this line would not come through.
There was an article in the Mexico Ledger, I believe, that stated that 11 governors in the East did not want this to come through because they wanted to produce their own sources of energy. And I was discussing with my father that nuclear energy is actually very, very clean. Although there is the risk of contamination, there is a mountain in Nevada, the name slips me right now, but that has stopped funding because the government would like us to pursue the wind energy. So
I have recently heard that there was some type of leak in that mountain where they store the nuclear waste. So they're still trying to figure out what caused that and trying to contain that.
I mean, and all that is true. I don't discount that. But no matter what energy we use, we still have to have power lines go through.
Whether it's nuclear or whether it's wind turbines, you
So-
still have transmission lines.
I mean, the transmission lines are going to be there, and they're going to have to be there. I realize it affects property values, but how do we handle this if we don't put more power lines out there to get the energy where it's needed?
This project is mainly to get the energy through, but Missouri is kind of a waypoint through to get the energy farther east where more is consumed. With the power lines running, it'll actually benefit Missouri and all the other states that it runs through due to the fact that it produces a more reliable energy grid. So it'll be a lot more easily accessible if the need arises. And with it being wind powered, you can't, there's always going to be a little wind, so it's never going to run out. It'll be abundant to where you can always use it.
Provided you're in the right location.
Yes.
Yes.
Most of the data on adverse effects of power is based on alternating current transmission lines. This is a direct current transmission line. There haven't been any in existence long enough at that kind of power load to have any substantial data. How do you manage to interpolate AC current to DC current?
There's actually a converter station in Missouri.
That they want
Well,
to-
I mean, there's one plant, but they're citing that it reduced crop yield, stunted growth on livestock. I don't believe that there's any data that will directly affect whatever effects the DC transmission line would cause, if any. You might research that.
I think the economic footprint for DC transmission lines is greatly reduced from the alternating current transmission line.
And a hint on that is that the lines that are already being planned or built are mostly in Europe, so you might research there.
How did you guys pick your topic? We picked our topic because this affects it's not only a national issue, but it's also a local issue, since the Rainbow Express Clean Line is going to come through water.
Any other questions?
What part of country can we?
Right now, there are several proposed routes, but they have not decided on a set route yet.
They're planning to run to the converter station just north of Mexico. There's a big converter station there. That's one of their proposed routes to take.
Anyone else have questions? Well, thank you much for your time.
Good job,
Very
you all.
informative.
Great job.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
I like your little mini turbines.
Take care of
Yeah, it's good. I can tell it's
Proud of
pretty-
you. Good job.
Thank you.
When did we get right there with hot air?
Not sometimes, yeah, use them.
Very neat.
Yeah, you all know. Angel girl on this?
Yes.
That's John's,
Right.
and that was Celestial. That's, yeah, Justin's.
I can't believe that's your phone bill.
You bring in donuts
Why
tomorrow.
don't you stick to the menu?
Moving on to public safety.
Oh, yeah.
City prosecutor, any report?
No report.
People are still coming to court.
No lack of testimonies.
Unfortunately.
Police department activity report. Information's in your packet. Questions or comments? Any other under police department?
If you would, please, sir. David's been helpless trying to get the server fixed up and get that. He's got some information for you.
Yeah, I'm confident that we can get it about half the price that our quote was.
Oh, wow.
I also have there's a dedicated account manager for the city of Centralia at Dell, and I've been talking to her directly. And she's gonna produce a quote, but whatever they quote now, if we aren't going to pull the trigger within the next 30 days, it becomes a moot point. They have to re-quote it if we're going to purchase it. So from what I gather, it's going to be part of next year's purchase.
Close enough to the end of the year that I don't believe that that would bump us above this year's appropriations in the
No.
general fund. And otherwise, it's sort of just a cash flow issue more than anything else. I mean, if you need to lock in a price now, we can put it on the agenda for next month.
And that's okay. Let me get that in. That was her only point, was that, if we aren't going to be pulling the trigger at any point soon, they'll have to reproduce, the quote again.
Right. But we can even do it on the first meeting.
Oh, exactly. So,
Yeah.
okay. Let me get the numbers together and then forward them on to everybody and then
Okay.
we'll make a decision. Anything else, Larry?
I got I think for the new budget we're going into in April, I don't remember specifically, but I think city administrator approved either 30,000 or 31,000 somewhere. I got my own couple, or 2011, they're Crown Vics. I think we'll get them both here. One's got equipment, one does not, which is to say a light bar. And then the other one should take the one we have and use it, but I think we'll be well under that threshold if we're using that for a benchmark. Probably should.
That'd be about the end of the Crown Vics.
If we get another car next year, I might get a Crown Vic, but that's gonna be awful tough. Those all-wheel drive Ford Taurus police packages will patrol that in Dodge Chargers now. But I asked about one of those all-wheel drive Ford Tauruses, but I don't think any of them's going to be out of service with respect to the patrol for probably September, August. And position to be able to wait. So, 'cause we've done that in the past, have we not, Lynn? Had our track laid out, so after the first of April, to be able to pull the trigger, is that what we've done in the past?
That'd be fine. I just looked it up. It's 30,500, which I believe was the number you gave me, but
I think that's about.
that's it. It's a target. We'll have a board meeting next week. We traditionally have a meeting as close to the end of March as practical to pay any last minute large bills so they don't amount to carry over on accounts payable for the audit. By then you will have approved a budget. So if you want to allow him to go ahead and lock it in and then formally approve it first week in April, that's fine.
Yeah, hire one down here. I told him go hide him under a shade tree down there and put a tarp over.
You didn't tell him the shade tree was over in Illinois, so.
I can talk about anything I talk to you about, really specific.
Yeah, I think that'll be fine.
All right, thank you very much. Other than that, business as usual. Oh, sorry.
Pardon me, so these are going to be replacing two older cars or expanding the fleet?
Replacement. Thank you very much.
Anything else for the police department? Moving on to fire department. Information's in your packet. Any questions? Any other under fire department?
Yeah, I'd like to bring up something. I would like to see the council maybe, see about getting, the firemen right now get like a $10 per call, hour call. I'd like to see that maybe raised to $12. I mean, it's been I can't remember how far back it's been, back in the nineties, I think.
The last time that, wow. And that's per hour.
Yes.
When they're on call.
Per meeting, I mean, even like on meeting night, I mean, even though we're there 3 hours, it's still, we just do an hour call.
Then would you be able to,
If you choose to do this, the budget for his department will accommodate it. I did spell it out in the budget, but they have made allowances for it, of course. Really hard to project right now because we had so many medical calls that we didn't used to get, but still,
okay,
it will take an ordinance. I'll ask Denny to take a look at other sections of the fire chapter and the fireworks chapter so that we're gonna do a change in that, so that we can do the other changes, just like we last meeting did a couple of updates to other portions of the code. This would be another one.
anyone's thoughts on making that change?
So the last one was in the nineties?
I think Marvin became chief, I think around 92 or so.
Uh-huh.
I think he got it up from 5 to 10 or 8.
Okay.
Lynn, do you know the answer?
I'd have to get my budget, code book.
I'm in favor of it.
Yeah.
I know it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time, I'm in favor of it as well.
Could you then direct me to include that in whatever changes we
Yes.
recommend?
Yes.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Anything else under fire department?
Now, the city electric department got our lights in, and I mean, world of difference right there. They went to the T8, you know,
Okay.
made a world of difference inside the station.
I can see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Always important.
Yeah.
Moving on, emergency management.
No report, sir.
Okay, protective, oh,
Quick question on that. How did the sirens work on the tornado drill day? Did you report on that?
I know that we tested them actually twice that week.
Oh, okay.
And the boys were out, and I did not hear that they had any problems with them.
Okay. All right, thank you.
protective inspection.
I have gotten the final code book that's part of the set, so I have given a advertisement to the guard to have a public notice that they're here, and reasonable notice that after 90 days of inspection period, we'll be calling for a public hearing.
Okay.
By then, the county should have adopted theirs, and any of the little administrative things that they do in their adoption, we can parallel. But as far as I know, they're not intending to change the permit fees, so it'll be simple.
Okay, great. Moving on to general government and finance. Economic development.
Mr. Rogers is ill, and let Phyllis know that he was not going to be able to attend up this evening. Presuming that the budget is adopted the way it is now, at next week's meeting, I will have ordinances to allow the mayor to sign an ongoing contract for another year with Freddie and one with the Friends of the Centralia Battlefield. And hopefully all that will be worked out in the package by Friday.
Excellent. On the July 4th fireworks.
We have a quote from J&M Display that's the same as last year's, but with more shells after a little negotiation. So, so that we may take advantage of their extra incentive by paying and locking things in early. We get extra fireworks beyond that, so I would expect to put that matter on the agenda for next week also. And along with the resolution, which is required by the city code, that you're designating the Centralia Recreation Park as a place for on 4th of July. We're gonna send one.
We became more bang for our buck.
Wow.
Well, I mean, we've traditionally taken advantage of those
Yeah.
incentives.
Sure.
And so
Sorry, I couldn't help it.
it'll be maybe a couple of shots more than in past years, but substantially the same and for the same price that we're paid.
And we've been happy with them.
Yeah, we've had no, what we call duds or
Yeah.
anything like that, so.
I think it's a great idea. Excuse me.
May I interject something about the fireworks?
Absolutely.
Last year, the company I worked for was a co-sponsor of the city of Columbia's fireworks. We do a much better job for a small community based on what they paid. I was so disappointed. I was so disappointed.
Wow.
So, I will be doing that again. I'll be here in Centralia. Our guys do a good job, and Lynn negotiates
Very well.
a good show.
I actually intended to do negotiations this time just by letting them know there was a possibility of competition.
That's good.
Good job.
Thank you, sir.
Is that on the 4th, is that on Friday?
It's not
Yes,
Friday.
it's on Friday this year.
So then you can take the rest of the weekend and go fishing.
You think that'll happen in my life?
You'll have to lobby the next person.
I know what that answer would be.
All right, moving on. Park Board. I don't see information in our packet.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
There was an agenda for the next
I'm
meeting.
sorry, I see it here. I apologize.
And there are several minutes for past ones.
Just didn't get that far, sorry. Any questions? Moving on to cemetery report.
None, sir?
Tree Board.
None that I know of.
Library.
I will say that the library opened up the new children's section,
Yes.
and that was a very well-attended event. I was, for one, very impressed with the job that they did. And I would like to say that I hope the public doesn't look at that and vote against the tax levy this time. The tax levy is, the tax levy is for operating expenses, and that project was all done through donations, so. Very, very well done job. Very impressive.
Anything else for Library Board? Moving on to the February financial statements. Information in the packet. Any questions? Hearing none?
Oh.
Oh. Go ahead.
Not a question, just remarks. It won't show up on these, it will show up on the last months of the fiscal year. We've gotten, except for the manufactured and merchants in lieu of surtax, we've gotten the property tax we're gonna get within the current fiscal year. Somebody among the railroad and utility taxpayers hadn't paid yet. And so, at least for the general fund, there's about a $13,000 shortfall, which historically one would presume that we will get in either April or May, so that'll double up next year. But when you see next month's financials, just bear that in mind, that will come off of the ending balance slightly. Otherwise, most of the final revenues seem to be the way they show up and are estimated in the budget.
Is that usual for them not to pay?
I took a look back, and it's been about 6 or 7 years before we had a similar instance. I mean, they're paying penalties on this now, presumably.
Right.
So I don't know why they wouldn't. I have no information that anybody has paid under protest like happened 4 years ago. So I don't expect that. It's just timing of when they got the money to the county. Could well be that they actually will pay the county before the end of March, but we won't get it until April.
Bills over $1,250. Any questions? Hearing none, moving on to other general government, the selecting official depository. So we have information or a letter from Heather.
I think we should follow her advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, since there's only one,
Since there's only one.
it's pretty much the same as last time, I think, except for a slight, very slight increase in per item fees. We have to go with a bank that
I was
has,
gonna say, I don't know that,
we don't have any choice to go outside of the city limits, so I would also agree that we should follow that advice and prepare contracts and ordinances to implement them. And some of that may be available this month, but more likely we'll do it in April when there are, the reorganized board is selected who's going to be on signature cards and all that.
Right.
And Mr. Watson is here from the bank to answer any questions you might want to have.
Just keep them simple.
There is a formal proposal that anybody would like to research between now and next Monday.
I'm fine with
Okay. I think they've taken pretty good care of us so far, so.
yeah, we haven't had any issues,
Right.
any complaints.
And I thank you for your job on that.
Thank you all.
So no other questions? You send you some sort of a question. Sir?
Did the other banks in town show any interest in this?
He declined a bit.
Thank you.
Moving on. Other.
Small bit of bad news. We have in our water treatment operations a meter that measures dissolved oxygen. It failed for a short period of time, and we got back running, and then it failed pretty much permanently. It's obsolete equipment. It's been obsolete for 5 years. We have to have it to comply with DNR regulations. So we have already ordered it, despite the fact that it's over $12.50. I'm letting you know that when you get the bill, this particular meter will be $1,605.35, including freight.
Do we have a
backup or a rental unit now?
Oh, I don't think.
Or that's just something that we have to purchase new and get it
Well,
installed?
since we can't get any parts and we wouldn't really know what the parts to fit, we'd have to send them back. Better to have a new piece of equipment
Right,
that
I agree.
is reliable
I just-
and is coming priority shipping, so we should be here.
Okay. I was just wondering what we were doing in the meantime, that it was down, or we just,
Not testing.
okay. That's about right here. Thanks.
I suppose if we had to comply with regs, you know, if there was a deadline, we could borrow
Okay.
from the water district or from the surrounding municipalities, and just take it back the same day.
Okay, thanks.
How often do we do measurements? I mean, how often is it required?
And I'm afraid I don't.
Okay.
I think it's pretty frequently, but I don't know that.
But not daily.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, maybe we should.
Any as may arise.
Does anybody know we're checking on Clifford?
Now it's warming up, I think we should do another
I
John.
think so,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a few other buildings in town that need some attention. Do we know where Merritt is with contacting the church folks?
I gave him 3 specific tasks I'd like to see accomplished
Okay,
quickly, certainly before I'm gone. That's one of them.
okay.
It's-
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
I did look at your bill and Denny's bill and Denny's neighbor's bill. Pattern isn't consistent. I don't have the foggiest reason why yours showed the drop in the February bill for January use, March bill for February usage that you would have gotten. It didn't seem to be something that was citywide. Mark has looked at the total consumption that we're being billed on by Ameren, and it doesn't show up. There's a jump in receipts last month, which could be attributed to the rate increase. You take that out, and it's down slightly from the previous month, but not enough that would match yours. And it doesn't show up in the same way for Denny and his name. So, if it happens again, we'll put a recording meter on to see if there's something with regard to your usage pattern and or the meter itself that we can discern, but I don't know that there's anything wrong with it.
That'll work. Any other as may arise? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.